Okay, everyone, welcome back to MTG Live. Sorry that this is being uploaded a little bit later in the day. I was wanting to do it earlier, but I had to dog sit, and both the dogs were going wild and crazy, and they weren't leaving me alone and such. And at one point, I was trying to do the video, and they ended up knocking it down and shutting everything off. So, yeah, I love dogs, but sometimes they want a little too much attention. um, Anyways, and now after I made some pot pie, I'm ready to do another video for the day. And I want to say ready run. Um, Let me double check on that. I want to make sure I got your username correct in that. Ready to random. Sorry, I did not mean ready to run. I meant ready to random. I want to say thank you for subscribing, and your comment was duly noted. I want to say thank you for the advice you put in that, and I will try to keep this between 20 to 30 minutes. It may go a little over. I'm still working on trying to do all this stuff and keep it a little shorter, but I'll try not to go into as much of a talky as I normally do. So that's duly noted. And I went to tapped.out.net, whatever it is, and I made a deck list, and I will upload the link to that in the description below. So that there was duly noted, and I'll probably go back to my other videos and upload their deck lists as well on those. So I want to say thank you for that. And if you guys have any more tips or advice or anything that I should do, just let me know. I want to say thank you for that, and it meant a lot, and it's really great to know that there are people out there who are willing to help me make this better. Alright, now that that's over, let's get on to our commander, which is actually the original commander I was trying to do for my first video, but I've been kind of redoing it and such. And that is Omnath, the Locus of Rage. Now, he's a very popular commander. Many people like him. He's 2 green, 2 red, 3 generic mana for a 5/5 legendary elemental with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. First off, that's already a great ability going on there, but his other ability is even better. Whenever Omnath, Locus of Rage, or another elemental you control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So we're going to run a lot of ramp in here, and then a lot of dropping lands down. With the spoilers for M19 over with, Scape Shift is definitely going to go in this deck if I can get my hands on it. I normally would put an Animist Awakening in here. I just want to go ahead and say that, but it's in another deck, so I kind of redid the deck without that. But Animist Awakening is another very good card that could go in here. Alright, so pretty much what we're going to do is hit those landfall abilities and just hit in with elementals as the way to make them block or kill them off so that Omnath can deal damage. Now, first off, we're going to start off with our legendaries, and the only other legendary we have in here is Mina and Din Wildborn. It's a red-green 2 generic mana for a 4/4 elf ally with you may play an additional land on each of your turns. Couple that with Omnath, getting 2 lands, 2 tokens. Very good. You can pay a red or a green, return a land you control to its owner's hand. Target creature gains trample until end of turn. Okay, that's also a great ability as well in this kind of deck, because you may not always be able to get your lands, or you may go through so many lands you just put them down so fast that you have nothing in your hand left. So that just allows you to return a land and play out another land, and then it gives one of your tokens trample or Omnath. Odds are you probably don't want to attack with Omnath as much as you would the others. Now we're getting into our Planeswalkers. The first card here is Nissa, Nature's Artisan. Some people say it differently. 2 green, 4 generic mana for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. +3, you gain 3 life. There's some life gain to help us if we're low on life. -4, reveal the top 2 cards of your library. Put all land cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest into your hand. We're running green-red. We don't have very much card draw, so this can either turn into card draw or turn into ability to activate Omnath. -12, creatures you control get +5/+5 and gain trample until end turn. That can easily turn our 5/5 tokens into 10/10s with trample. They become humongous threats, especially depending upon how many we could have. Yeah, that's pretty much that on that card. The next one we have here is Domri Raid. He's a green, red, and 1 generic mana for a 3 loyalty planeswalker +1. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. Okay, so first off, that's just very good. It lets us get a little kind of peek at what we got to let's plan out our next moves. And if it's a creature, we get it, and then we can play it out because we're going to have the mana to do that. -12 target creature you control fights another target creature. Odds are you're not going to do that, but if you want to activate Omnath's ability, like for example, if someone has an 8/8 creature and you have a 5/5 token, you can have them fight the 8/8. It kills the 8/8, but then Omnath can deal 3 damage to it to kill it. Yeah, you lose a token, but you kill their big creature. -7 is I really recommend out of all the planeswalkers to get to this emblem on him the most. Protect him. If anything, try to get this ultimate. -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control have double strike, trample, hexproof, and haste. That turns our 5/5s into 10/10s, technically, with trample, hexproof, so there goes their removal, and haste. So that means every time we play a land, whatever token we get immediately can attack. If you were to double it up with the new Vivian Reed card, she does pretty much that. It gives them like reach, vigilance, and indestructible for her ultimate. Do those two together. Just imagine it if you could get both those emblems off. That's pretty much you win the game. Okay, so the next planeswalker we have here is Nissa Vital Force. She's 2 green, 3 generic mana for a 5 loyalty planeswalker +1 untapped target land you control until your next turn becomes a 5/5 elemental creature with haste. It's still land. Okay, so first off, that gives us protection. It can protect herself or our other planeswalkers. It's an elemental, so it can either attack or tap for mana, or if it dies, Omnath ability will still activate. -3, return target permanent from your graveyard to your hand. Odds are you're not going to really do that. Probably, most likely not. -6, you get an emblem with whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. I really recommend getting her emblem as well. It helps fix our card draw because we're going to run through a lot of cards in our hand. We're going to have a lot of mana to play, so we're going to need some kind of card draw. And sadly, I don't have a Harmonize. So now the next card. Now we're into just our rares. It's Growing Ranks. In this deck, it would be 2 green, 2 generic mana for an enchantment with, at the beginning of your upkeep, Populate. If you don't know, it's put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of a creature token you control. It just gives us an extra token at the beginning of our upkeep. Next card is Robohook. He's a green and red, 4 generic mana for a XX elemental. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. We're going to have plenty of lands on the battlefield. He could easily come out as a 10/10. Blood Rush. You pay a green, red, and 1 generic. Discard Robohook. Target attacking creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. If you can attack with Omnath and know for sure he's going to hit, you can do that and possibly win through commander damage. Now the next card here is Gaia's Touch. Gaia. People say it differently. It's 2 green for an enchantment. You may put one additional land into play during each of your turns, but that land must be a basic forest. You may sacrifice Gaia's Touch to add 2 green to your mana pool. Okay, so first off, some people are like, it's just forest, but who cares? Who cares? Also, we're going to have cards that are going to let us search our library for any basic land. So if you have this card out, you can search up for forests and then put them into play. It's a second land a turn, so if you have a mountain, put that in, search up for a forest, put that back in. Or if you just need extra mana, you can just sacrifice this for 2 mana. So you basically get back what you spent on it. Next card here is Mana Flare. This is a really fun card, and I enjoy using it. It makes the game very chaotic, and it's one of the few cards that it's not very expensive, but it's always a great card to play. It's a red 2 generic mana for an enchantment with whenever a player taps a land for mana, it produces 1 additional mana of the same type. So in our deck, we're ramping out. We're going to ramp out a whole lot. I've gotten to the point where I was able to cast Omnath 3 times. It was before I redid the deck. I was able to recast him 3 times in the exact same turn. And he's 7 mana, people. So that's a total of 21 mana. I know some decks can go a lot more, can go infinite mana, but hey, I'm working with budget, easy to get, not those super expensive cards that do all this super amazing stuff. So for this kind of deck, that's very good. The next card we have here is Wall of Roots. It's a green and 1 generic mana for a wall. Put a 0 -1 counter onto it, or just a -1 counter, I guess, since it's a 0/5. You put one of those onto it. You add a force to your mana pool. Play this ability as mana source. Use this ability only once each turn. First off, it's a 2 mana 0/5. It's a great blocker early on. Yeah, it gets smaller as we use it for mana, but it's still mana that we can use. So turn 3 after we play it, we can have, or turn 2 we can play this out, put a -1 counter onto it, play out an Elvish Mystic or a Lawnmower Elves. Still useful. Yeah, it gets smaller, but eventually you can just chump block or whatever, or just kill it off getting mana from it. Next card here is Satyr Hedonist. He's a green and 1 generic mana for a 2/1 Satyr with pay a red, sacrifice him, add 3 red to your mana pool. We're just getting more mana. We're just getting more and more mana. We're in our getting mana area with creatures and such. The next card here is Smoke Braider. It's a red and 1 generic mana for a 1/1 Elemental Shaman with tap, add 2 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast elemental spells or activate abilities of elementals. I mean, for example, not there yet, but I'll set this to the side and I'll do a for example here in a moment. Next card here is Burning Tree Emissary. Pay either 2 red, 2 green, or any combination thereof for a 2/2 human shaman with when it enters battlefield you add a red and green to your mana pool. Play this out turn 2, play out Smoke Braider, then play out some other elemental that's a 2-drop. I don't know, I can't think of any. I don't think I have any in this deck. Next card here is Mana Geyser. It's 2 red, 3 generic mana for an instant. With tap, add a red to your mana pool. Tapped lands your opponent. Add a red to your mana pool for each tapped land your opponents control. Some people may be wondering, why are you running this? It's 5 mana. But yes, it is 5 mana, but there's a possibility that you could get double that or even triple that out of it. Because eventually there's almost always one turn in Commander where all your opponents tap out. And it's usually around turn 5 or 6, which is when you can play this. Yeah, it's only red mana you get back, but you could easily just use it for red spells. Or if you decide to put burn into this kind of deck, play it with an X spell. Comet Storm, I think. Next card here is our ramp stuff. Elvish Mystic. It's a green tap 4/1 tap to add a force to your mana pool, as well as Lawnmower Elves, the exact same thing. Run them in here because it just gives us a chance to get either possibly both of them in our opening hand, which would be amazing, or even just one in the opening hand is great. Next card here is Multani's Harmony. It's a green for an enchantment aura. With enchant creature has tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Just some mana fixing. It's a 1 mana, so it makes a good 1 mana drop slot. Next card here is Gruul Cluestone, 3 generic mana for an artifact with tap to add a red or green to your mana pool. Pay a red or green, tap, sacrifice Gruul Cluestone, draw a card. Fixes some card draw, fixes our mana. Later on, we won't need them at all. Gruul Keyrune, 3 generic mana for an artifact with tap to add a red or green to your mana pool. Pay a red or green, it becomes a 3/2 red-green beast artifact creature with trample to end turn. It just gives us a possibility for another blocker. Now then, we're going to get more into our landfall stuff, such as Zektar Shrine Expedition. I probably pronounced it horribly. It's a red and 1 generic mana for an enchantment with landfall. Whenever land enters battlefield under your control, you may put a quest counter on it. Remove 3 quest counters from it. Sacrifice it. Put a 7/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste onto battlefield. Exile at the beginning of the next end step. Yes, with that exile, it won't activate Omnath's second ability, but who wants to take 7 damage? Especially since you could possibly play this out, then the next turn, then 2 turns later, possibly get a 7/1 on the field and be able to attack. No one's going to want to take that much, and with that 1 toughness, it's very easy to kill if they block it with anything. So, what I expect them to do is you attack with that, and if they're not willing to take that, they're going to block. Omnath will then, he'll probably deal some trample damage, and then Omnath will be able to deal 3 damage to them or another creature they control. Now the next card we have here is Embodiment of Insight. It's a green 4 generic mana for an 4/4 elemental with vigilance. Land creatures you control have vigilance. Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you may have target land you control become a 3/3 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still land. So for one, you can just play out a lot of lands, get a lot of these, attack, they either block them and kill them, then Omnath deals his damage through his ability, or they just take the damage, and then you can tap it to play cards out in your second main phase since they have vigilance. Now, couple that card here with Embodiment of Fury, which is a red and 3 generic mana for a 4/3 elemental with trample. Land creatures you control have trample and does the exact same thing aside from the trample. Vigilance and trample, 3/3s. If they're both out, you get 2 of those whenever a land enters the battlefield. Very useful. Back during the Zendikar stuff, I used to run a deck with play sets of them both in the Elemental Uprising. Next card here is Spore Mound. He's 2 green, 3 generic mana for a fungus, 3/3. Doesn't say landfall, but it's pretty much landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token onto the battlefield. It just gives us more blockers. It gives us an ability to swing in with all our giant elemental tokens and not have to worry about any kind of retribution from them. We'll be able to block them with these little tiny 1/1 tokens. Next card here is Occam Stonewalker. He's a red and 1 generic mana for a human shaman 2/1 with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay a red and 2. If you do, put a 3/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste onto the battlefield. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step. If it dies, it activates Omnath. If it doesn't, odds are it's going to deal some kind of damage. And we'll have mana to be able to pay this ability multiple times because we'll be playing multiple lands a turn. Now the next card here is Granitic Titan. Probably butchered that as well. 2 red, 4 generic mana for a 5/4 elemental with menace. Decent. Cycling 2, you pay 2, discard this card, draw a card. If you don't need this out as a body, you can just cycle it to get a little card draw out of it. Now the next card we have here is Maze Rusher. This is not meant to help our other creatures, it's meant to help our tokens. Which is, Maze Rusher is a red and 5 generic mana for a 6/3 elemental haste. Multicolored creatures you control have haste. So all those 5/5 tokens we get when they enter, they don't have to wait a turn, they can immediately attack. Next one is pretty much the same thing like we did with the embodiments. Maze Behemoth. It's a green and 5 generic mana for a 5/4 elemental with trample. Multicolored creatures you control have trample. So if you have both these out, every time you get one of those 5/5 tokens, they get haste and trample. Very great. Now I would not recommend attacking with those maze creatures there at all. You kind of want to keep them up so that your tokens can attack and we don't have to worry about them dying. Because they'll become something that your opponent will want to block to kill. Now the next card we have here is Molten Ravager. It's a red and 2 generic mana for a 0/4 elemental. Pay a red, it gets +1/+0 until end turn. We're going to have plenty of mana. Especially if we have that mana flare out. Just one mountain will give it +2/+0. Eventually it can swing in for a whole bunch of damage. Next card here is Fiery Hellhound. Does about the same thing. 2 red, 1 generic mana for a 2/2. Pay a red, it gets +1/+0. Next card here is Heartlash Cinder. It's a red and 1 generic mana for a 1/1 elemental warrior with haste. Chroma. When it comes into play, it gets +X/+0 until end turn, where X is the number of red mana symbols in the mana cost of permanents you control. That could easily get out of hand for 2 mana. That could easily get out of control. Because we have plenty of creatures that are going to have red costs in their mana. Next card is Scarred Guild Mage. It's a red and a green for a 2/2 element. Nah, not elemental. I was on elementals for a bit. Human Shaman. Pay a red green. Creatures you control gain trample until end turn. All our tokens get trample. Red green and a generic target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature until end of turn. Still land. So you can give all your creatures trample and then attack in with them. And then if your opponent tries to attack you, you can easily turn a land into a 4/4 elemental to block. Now the next card we have here is Killing Fiend. He's a red and 1 generic mana for a 1/2 elemental beast. Love this card. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it gets +3/+0 until end of turn. Played in a wizard's deck or not, or in this, for some super cheap instant sorceries to let search for lands, he can easily get overpowered. He becomes a giant threat, and he's honestly one of my favorite elemental cards. He used to be one of my top favorite cards in the first place. Next card here is Fire Shrine Keeper. He's a red for a 1/1 elemental with menace. You can pay a red and 7, tap, sacrifice him. It deals 3 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. Very good, very useful because if you can get to the 8 mana to sacrifice him, he dies, so Omnath can deal 3 damage to a target creature or opponent, and then he's going to be able to deal 3 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures. Still very useful. Now the next card we have here is Arc Runner. It's a red and 2 generic mana for a 5/1 elemental ox with haste. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Arc Runner. Okay, so one, we can immediately swing in for 5 damage with him. And then if they block, odds are they won't block him because he'll be gone. But that means they'll take him 5. And then if they do block him, he dies. If Omnath is out, either way, if they block or don't, at the end step, Omnath is going to end up dealing 3 damage to a target creature or player. Now, next card we have here is Lightning Elemental. He's a red and 3 generic mana for an elemental with 4/1 power and toughness with haste. We're running a lot of creatures with elementals with high power and low toughness because we want them to be a big enough threat that they're gonna want to block. But then when they block, odds are it's really gonna kill our elemental, so that Omnath can then activate. That's what we want to do. Next card is Regathan Firecat. He's a red and 2 generic mana for a 4/1, like I said, elemental cat. Low toughness, they're going to block it, it's going to die. Omnath is going to deal 3 damage something. Cobble Brute, he's a red 3 generic mana for a 5/2 elemental. Just an elemental to get out there. Scoria Elemental, he's a red 4 generic mana for a 6/1 elemental this time. He becomes a very high threat with very low toughness that can die. Give him trample, very useful. Gaia's Protector. He's a red green and 3 generic mana. Sorry about that. 4/2 elemental warrior. He must be blocked if able. If your opponent only has 1 creature and you want to swing in with everything, that's a good way to make sure that they don't try to block all your stuff. It's a really good way. Make sure that don't just chump block your biggest creature. This way you can deal fatal damage. Claws of Valakut, 2 red and 1 generic mana for an enchantment aura with enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +1/+0 for each mountain you control and has first strike. Very useful. We're going to have plenty of mountains out, so it could easily become a 5/5, get +5/+0. Stone Fury, 2 red 3 generic mana for an instant with deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. If we hard cast it, it's easily going to just be 5 damage. At the earliest. Spire Barrage, red 4 generic mana for sorcery, deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of mountains you control. Same thing as Stone Fury, except just mountains. Struggle to Survive, red 2 generic mana for struggle. It deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. And for Survive, it's a green and a generic for sorcery with Aftermath. You cast this card from your graveyard, then exile. Each player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. If we've been losing a lot of elementals, that's very useful. If we've been blocking with a lot of lands that have become creatures and they just die, that's a good way to get them back into our library so that we can play them back out again. Especially if we're running low on lands in the deck. Ground Assault, it's a green and a red for a sorcery. It deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. That's kind of the little thing we're on with that little group of cards there. Garruk's Pack Leader. It's a green and 4 generic mana for a 4/4 beast. Whenever another creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Pretty much everything we're going to play out is going to have power 3 or greater. So we're going to get some card draw to help fix our hands so that we can have more answers to things so that we can play out more lands. And all those tokens entering the battlefield will then activate the pack leader. Elemental Uprising. It's a green 1 generic mana for an instant with target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still land. It must be blocked this turn if able. Same thing as the Gaia's Protector. If you want to attack in, that's a good way to make sure they block this. And it's a 2-drop 4/4 creature that can easily be used as a blocker early on. I used to run a playset of that, like I said. Very useful. It annoys the crap out of your opponents as well. Swell of Growth. It's a green and 1 generic mana for an instant with target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Buffs a creature, gives us a land to activate Omnath. Now the next card here is Map of the Waste. It's a green and 2 generic mana for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card. Put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Bolster 1. If you don't know what bolstering does, it's choose a creature with the least toughness among creatures you control, and put a 1/1 counter on it. So it can easily buff one of our weaker creatures, make it a little bit more of a threat, or possibly just something that's more useful. Arosha Cultivator. It's a green for a 0/3 human druid with you pay a green 2 generic mana, tap, sacrifice it. Search your library for a basic land card. Put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Odds are if you play this out for turn 1, you're going to wait until you get Omnath out to just sack her. Because you're going to want to have Omnath out to sacrifice that, unless you really need the lands. Undu Giant. Green 3 generic mana for a 2/4 giant druid. Enters battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Same thing, wait till Omnath is out to get that. Sakura Tribe Elder. It's a green 1 generic mana for a 1/1 snake shaman with sacrifice it. Search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. This is actually a very good card. It's run in many commander decks because you can basically block with him and then sacrifice him like before the damage is dealt, so that the creature it's blocking is blocked, or if it becomes blocked, so that the creature it's blocking is blocked, but you still get something out of the Tribe Elder. You still get to go get that land and take no damage. Natural Connection. It's a green 2 generic mana for an instant. We're in our searching up for lands section. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, and shuffle your library. Same thing. Puts out lands for us. Wild Wanderer. It's a green 3 generic mana for a 3/2 elf druid. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Maybe eventually I'll stop stuttering in these videos. I'm still trying to get used to doing all this, so sorry for this. I still want to say thank you guys for watching this stuff. Next card is Rampant Growth. It's a green 1 generic mana for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, put it into play, tap, then shuffle your library. 2 mana, search for a card. Exploding Borders. It's a green and red for 2 generic mana for a sorcery with domain. Search your library for a basic land card, put that into play, tap, then shuffle your library. It deals X damage to target player, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. This gives us a little extra something to do. Lay of the Land. It's a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's a 1-drop, lets us get in the land, and if we have cards that let us play multiple lands, we can play in the land. Explorer Scope. It's a really good artifact in this kind of deck. It's a 1 generic mana for a artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature attacks, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield, tapped, equipped for 1. Really good. Lets us get lands by attacking. Even if we're just attacking with creatures that aren't going to do much, like those elementals that we're just attacking with so that they die. It's really useful so that we can just equip it to them. Yeah, they're going to die, but we're still going to get a land out of it as well, which can then activate Omnath, which will then give us another blocker in place of them. Shifet Monitor. It's a green 5 generic mana for a 6/5 Lizard with cycling. You can pay a green 3 generic mana, discard it, draw a card. When you cycle it, you may search your library for a basic land card or a desert card, put it onto the battlefield, and shuffle your library. 1, the land doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, so that's very useful. Odds are you're going to play this to cycle it unless you actually need a body, because then you get a draw and a land onto the battlefield. Very useful for 4 mana. Next card we have here is Pulse of Marasa. It's a green and 2 generic mana for an instant. Return target creature or land card from a graveyard to its owner's hand. You gain 6 life. It lets us go back and get a land if it died, or a creature that died, and we still get life out of it for 3 mana. It's very useful. It's a very playable card in anything, really. Anything with green can always play this kind of card. Next card is Quarry Beetle. He's a green and 4 generic mana for a 4/5 insect with when it enters the battlefield, you may return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Just lets us go back and get those lands that died, or whatever, or if they were discarded from us. And it goes immediately into the battlefield, not tapped as well. Groundskeeper, it's 1 green for a 1/1 human druid. You pay a green and a generic, return target basic land card from your graveyard to your hand. Very useful, because he doesn't sacrifice it and it's not a one-time thing. If you have the mana, you can easily return 3 or 4 lands. And then if you have the cards out to let you play more, you can play them all out again. Sky Shroud Ranger. It's 1 for a 1/1 elf with tap. Choose a land card in your hand and put it into play. Very useful. I love it. It's from Tempest. It's an old card. They don't make this anymore. At least won't for a while. Probably not with the Lawnmower Scout out. It's a really useful kind of card, and I love that it's just 1 mana for a 1/1. You tap, put a land. Next card is Lawnmower Scout. It's just a 1/3 that does the exact same thing, but for 1 more mana. Okay, so now we're getting into our non-basic lands. A Rugged Highland. After tap, you gain a life. Tap for a red or green. Timber Gorge enters tapped. Tap for a red or green. Evolving Wilds, tap, search your library for a land. This enters battlefield, it activates Omnath, tap, sacrifice it, get a land, activates Omnath, you get 2 5/5s and a land out of it. Same thing for Terramorphic Expanse. Mog Hollows, enters battlefield, you tap to add a colors to your mana pool, or you can tap to add a red or green to your mana pool. It does not untap during your untapped phase. Rocky Tar Pit. Enters battlefield, comes into play, tap, sacrifice it. Search your library for a swamp or mountain card, put that land into play, shuffle your library afterwards. The reason why I run this is it could possibly be equal to Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, because the lands Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds come into play tapped, but the cards themselves, Evolving Wild and Terramorphic Expanse, don't come into play tapped. So you can immediately tap them to go get a land that comes into play tapped. Or you can play a Rocky Tar Pit that comes into play tapped, tap it, search your library for those lands, and then they come into play untapped. Same thing with Grasslands. Comes into play tapped, search your library for a plains or a forest, put it into play. Could either go either way. Groll Guildgate enters battlefield tapped to add a red or a green to your mana pool. And for our basics, we're running 15 green and 14 mountains. These decks are just templates if you guys want to make any kind of deck that you would prefer in it. If you guys want to make this deck, feel free to make it. Go through, pull out cards or whatever. Let me know if there's anything that you guys think would be good and useful for this kind of deck. Remember, I try to do it as stuff that, like, you guys don't know what I have, so because I always try to make decks based on what I actually have at the moment. Because it's not fair to make a deck that's got like some kind of proxy in it that's like $30 that whoever you play odds are isn't gonna have. But yeah, let me know what you guys would put into this. Let me know any more advice or anything. I'm sorry. I want to say sorry. Ready to random. I went a little bit over that 30-minute mark, but hey, I got it down in time. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. I felt like I was kind of rushing it, which I was trying to do. I was trying to hit that shorter video time. Tell me what you guys think. Hope y'all enjoyed this. I know I enjoyed it, and I'm going to fix that light because I think you guys have noticed it's been going on and off. Every time I feel like I'm about to change it out, it just stays good for like a whole day or two, and then it doesn't. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Comment, like, subscribe, whatever. Just tell me what you guys think. Alright, thank you. See y'all next video. Peace.